As the night settles gently over the vast Pacific, the world grows quiet, and the ocean begins to breathe in slow, rhythmic waves, a timeless lullaby whispered across thousands of miles of open water. High above, the sky stretches like an endless tapestry of stars, each one shimmering with the same light that once guided ancient voyagers across these immense blue depths. The camera drifts slowly over the rolling surface of the sea, capturing the deep indigo currents that reflect the moon's soft glow, and then glides toward the serene outline of a quiet coastline where palm trees sway with the gentlest touch of a warm night breeze. In this peaceful moment, the world feels suspended between past and present, between starlit heavens and the living water below. And so, with the hush of the waves as your guide, allow your mind to drift across the world's largest ocean, to follow the footsteps of the greatest navigators in human history. Let your breath match the rhythm of the tide, let your thoughts settle like sand beneath calm waters, and let the story of the Polynesians unfold slowly before you, an ancient tale of courage, discovery, and boundless connection written in wind, waves, and stars. Tonight, you are invited to journey with them, gently, quietly, carried by the ocean that remembers every path once taken. Across the quiet cradle of the Pacific, before maps existed and long before compasses were ever imagined, the story of the Polynesians begins in gentle whispers rising from the ancient highlands of Taiwan, more than 5,000 years ago, where the early Austronesian peoples lived between dense green forests and calm coastal shores, shaping their lives around wind, wood, and water. Here, in small villages shaded by bamboo groves and nourished by the rhythms of the sea, generations of skilled hands learned to carve trees into vessels that floated like living creatures upon the tide, creating the first outrigger canoes, simple, elegant, and astonishingly stable in rough open waters. These canoes were not just tools. They were the heartbeat of exploration, the beginning of a relationship between humans and ocean that would grow into one of the greatest achievements in human history. Families wove sails from plant fibers, shaping cloth that caught wind like a bird's wings, and as their confidence grew, they looked beyond their shores toward distant horizons touched by morning sunlight. Over hundreds upon hundreds of years, their descendants drifted slowly outward, first into the Philippines, then further into the islands of Indonesia, navigating through chains of emerald archipelagos where volcanic peaks rose through mist and reefs glowed beneath shallow turquoise water. Their migration was never sudden. It was a patient, generational unfolding, parents teaching children the patterns of stars, the feeling of swells beneath their feet, the way clouds form above unseen land far beyond the edge of sight. As each community moved onward, they carried with them their languages, their seeds, their animals, their stories, their memories, and their dreams, spreading their culture like gentle ripples expanding across a vast blue world. Little by little, island by island, they built the foundation for a journey that would eventually push humanity farther across the ocean than any civilization before them, setting in motion a wave of exploration so expansive, so extraordinary, that it would reshape the map of human migration forever. And so, under soft starlit skies and the endless rhythm of waves, the origins of the Polynesian story took root, not in a single moment, but in centuries of courage, curiosity, and quiet determination, beginning a voyage that would stretch across the largest ocean on Earth and echo through time as one of mankind's most remarkable achievements. Far beyond the comforting familiarity of their home islands, beneath a sky filled with shimmering constellations that mapped the heavens like ancient scripture, the Polynesian navigators sailed into the living heart of the Pacific Ocean, guided by knowledge passed down through generations and refined over thousands of years. Their canoes sliced through waters so vast that, for most of humanity, they seemed endless. Yet to these voyagers, every ripple, every swell, every shift of wind carried meaning. The ocean was not an obstacle. It was a teacher, a companion, a guide. At night, they lifted their eyes to star paths, long, invisible highways traced across the firmament, each star rising from a known point, traveling its eternal route, and setting precisely where their ancestors had memorized it beneath them. The ocean whispered even more secrets, the long, steady swells that rolled from distant storms, signaling land far beyond the horizon. The cross-currents created by islands too far away to see, but close enough to stir the sea's surface, the faint reflection of pale clouds glowing above hidden shores. Even the birds, circling high above the waves, became living signposts, tropic birds and frigates gliding toward their nesting grounds, revealing the direction of land. Every clue was woven together inside the mind of the navigator, who carried the map not on parchment or stone, but within memory itself. And as the canoes glided across moonlit waters, the navigators guided their people deeper into the Pacific's embrace, trusting in the ancient wisdom that lived within their pulse and within the rhythm of the waves. With each passing generation, the double-hulled canoes evolved into masterpieces of craftsmanship, massive vessels capable of carrying families, plants, animals, tools, and the seeds of entire cultures. Their hulls, carved from carefully chosen trees and bound with fiber ropes that could withstand relentless salt and strain, worked together like twin guardians stabilizing the craft against unpredictable seas. Above them rose triangular woven sails that caught the wind with both softness and strength, pushing the voyagers forward into territories untouched by human footsteps. Days drifted into nights, and nights stretched into weeks as the vast ocean expanded around them like an endless blue universe. Yet inside this immensity, they felt no fear, because the ocean spoke to them in a language they understood. When stars disappeared behind clouds, they traced the swell under the canoe. When wind shifted, they listened to the rigging's soft hum. They drank rainwater gathered in gourds, roasted fish over stones, and told stories that reinforced the bravery of ancestors who once ventured into the unknown. Every voyage became part of a long, continuous chain of human movement, a migration that did not rush but flowed like a river of time across thousands of miles. Slowly, patiently, and with remarkable consistency, they connected islands separated by horizons so distant that even the sun seemed to stretch itself thinner across them. Their journeys were not merely physical passages but acts of trust, acts of faith, and acts of cultural survival, building bridges of memory between lands scattered across the world's largest ocean. As the generations multiplied and voyages continued, the seemingly empty spaces of the Pacific began to pulse with human presence. Tiny atolls surrounded by turquoise lagoons transformed into thriving villages, where the scent of breadfruit roasting mingled with the gentle rustle of palm leaves. Larger volcanic islands became the foundations for complex societies filled with chiefs, artisans, navigators, and farmers, all bringing with them the traditions carried from their ancestral homelands. These communities adapted to the unique character of each island, cultivating taro in freshwater valleys, fishing beyond barrier reefs, carving meeting houses, chanting genealogies, and weaving stories into every part of life. What had once been vast stretches of open sea slowly became a network of cultures connected by voyaging routes, marriage exchanges, shared language roots, and sacred memories. Thousands of miles apart, yet spiritually intertwined, the Polynesian world grew like a constellation, each island a star, each voyage a connecting line. And though the distances between them were enormous, their unity was woven through the rhythms of navigation, the shared respect for the ocean, and the understanding that they all descended from ancestors who once dared to step beyond the familiar shore and trust the horizon. This quiet, powerful expansion filled the Pacific with human warmth, transforming one of the most remote regions on Earth into a cradle of innovation, exploration, and enduring cultural beauty. So across the deep waters, guided by stars older than memory and faith stronger than fear, the Polynesians pushed ever farther into the blue, their souls aligned with wind, wave, and sky. Their journeys were not explosive bursts of conquest, but gentle tides of discovery that moved with the patience of centuries. Each canoe that set sail carried not only people but possibilities, not only supplies but stories, not only tools but the quiet certainty that the world was far larger than the land behind them. And as they moved forward into the mysterious expanse of the ocean, they reshaped the map of human exploration, filling the Pacific with life, with language, with song, with art, with the footsteps of countless generations. In the slow, calm rhythm of their voyages, we find one of humanity's most profound truths: that courage can be gentle, exploration can be peaceful, and even the largest ocean can feel like home when navigated with patience, wisdom, and trust. Their expansion into the blue was not merely a chapter in history. It was a testament to the harmony between humans and nature, to the power of memory carried across water, and to the quiet brilliance of those who looked at the horizon and understood that it was not the end, but the beginning of an endless path. Over countless generations of voyaging, the Polynesians reached 3 distant points of the Pacific, forming what we now call the Polynesian Triangle, an immense, invisible shape, stretching thousands of miles across open ocean, connecting lands that seemed impossibly far apart, yet were spiritually intertwined through shared ancestry. To the north lay Hawaii, a chain of volcanic islands rising from deep ocean trenches, where mist drifts across forested cliffs and luau fields shimmer with fresh water. To the southwest stood Aotearoa, known today as New Zealand, a land of vast green valleys and towering mountains capped with snow even in summer, so different from the tropics yet embraced by the same voyaging spirit. And to the southeast, isolated on the far edge of the Pacific, rested Rapa Nui, Easter Island, its windswept grasslands dotted with the iconic moai, massive stone guardians carved in honor of deified ancestors. These places, separated by thousands of miles of water, formed the outer edges of a cultural universe built not by accident, but by deliberate, skilled, courageous exploration. Each destination became a world of its own, shaped by the character of the land and the dreams of the people who settled there. As communities took root within the Polynesian Triangle, they blossomed into distinct cultures that reflected both their shared heritage and the unique environments they encountered. In Hawaii, life was shaped by fertile valleys, lava fields, and the rhythm of trade winds. People cultivated taro in terraced luau, fished in calm coastal waters, and built heiau, sacred temples, of stone, where priests performed rituals to honor gods of sky, sea, and harvest. Across the world in Aotearoa, the Maori adapted to a cooler climate and abundant forests filled with giant trees and powerful birds. They became master woodcarvers, creating intricate meeting houses, canoes, and weapons, their art woven with spirals that echoed the movement of waves and winds. To the far east on Rapa Nui, the environment was stark and the land small, yet the people developed one of the most astonishing carving traditions on Earth. Quarrying volcanic stone, they shaped moai that stood as tall as houses, each representing an ancestor watching over the community with silent vigilance. Though these cultures grew differently, guided by climate, resources, and isolation, the soul of their traditions remained linked, like branches of the same ancient tree stretching toward 3 distant. Across this vast triangle, the Polynesians built temples, perfected agriculture, carved symbols of power and protection, and maintained a connection to the ancestors who once guided their canoes through the night. Their chants preserved genealogies reaching back hundreds of generations. Their dances told stories of gods, heroes, and voyages. Their art, though regionally distinct, shared patterns of balance, symmetry, and respect for the natural world. Even separated by unimaginable distances, more than the width of many continents, the people of Hawaii, Aotearoa, and Rapa Nui recognized familiar echoes in each other's traditions. Similar words, shared myths, identical techniques in boat building, navigation, tattooing, and storytelling. The ocean did not divide them. it connected them. It served as their highway, their memory, and their spiritual center. Within the Polynesian Triangle, every island became a chapter of a single story, one of resilience, imagination, and cultural brilliance. And though each community evolved in its own direction, all remained tied to the same ancestral voyagers who once set their sails toward the unknown and filled the Pacific with life, meaning, and legacy. In the heart of the Polynesian world, culture was not simply a practice or a tradition. It was a living force woven into every breath of daily life, rooted deeply in the values of ohana, or family, community, and the ever-present embrace of the natural world. Villages thrived on cooperation, where families lived together in harmony with land and sea, raising children who were taught from an early age to listen to the wind, to respect the tides, and to honor the stories of their ancestors. Everything around them carried meaning. The rustling of pandanus leaves, the sound of conch shells echoing at dawn, the soft glow of evening light falling across canoes resting on the sand. Work was shared, meals were communal, and joy flowed naturally from gatherings filled with laughter, music, and dance. They were people of the earth and people of the ocean, balancing practicality with deep spirituality, survival with celebration. As each generation grew, they inherited not only land and skills, but a worldview that recognized the sacredness of all life, where mountains were ancestors, trees were guardians, and waves were messengers carrying memories of those who came before. Their identity was shaped by this harmony, and their culture flourished in the rhythm of seasons, ceremonies, and shared human connection. In Polynesia, art was never merely decoration. It was a vessel for history, a language of symbols, and a bridge between the physical world and the spiritual one. Tadao, the traditional tattoo art practiced across the islands, held profound meaning. Each pattern told a story: lineage, achievements, responsibilities, spiritual beliefs, a person's life etched permanently into their skin. These markings carried identity in a world without written alphabets, making every body a living archive of ancestry. The creation of tapa cloth, made from the bark of mulberry trees, was another cherished art form. Women soaked, softened, and beat the bark into sheets, then painted them with geometric patterns and sacred motifs, using color and rhythm to encode stories passed down through centuries. Oral tradition served as libraries of knowledge, songs, chants, genealogies, epics of gods, heroes, and voyagers, and each performance was both storytelling and time travel. Before writing existed in these islands, words were memorized in rhythmic patterns, carried forward through countless generations by elders, navigators, priests, dancers, and orators who preserved the heart of the culture with extraordinary precision. Hula in Hawaii, haka in Aotearoa, pi'i chanting in the Marquesas, these were not mere dances, but forms of spiritual expression tied to history, emotion, and cosmic connection. In this world, the arts were sacred tools that kept the past alive and guided the future. At the center of Polynesian spirituality stood a profound understanding of the ocean, not as a barrier, but as a living, breathing ancestor. The sea shaped their destiny, nourished their bodies, tested their courage, and connected island to island like an endless pathway crafted by the gods. For them, navigation was not only a skill, it was a sacred practice, guided by stars that held the wisdom of deities and ancestors who watched from above. In traditional navigation schools, master navigators taught students to feel the heartbeat of the ocean beneath a canoe, to sense slight changes in currents, to read the way clouds curved over distant islands, and to listen to the silence of night until it revealed direction. These lessons were taught not through books, but through lived experience, whispered in moonlight, repeated in ritual, and reinforced by deep reverence for the natural world. Spirituality was woven into everything they touched. Canoes were blessed before voyages, food was offered to ancestors before being eaten, Trees were thanked before being cut for sails or carving. Life was surrounded by unseen forces, mana, the spiritual energy that flowed through people, animals, stones, and waves. The ancestors were never absent. They were in the wind that filled sails, in the stars that lit the night sky, in the warmth of sunlight across the ocean. For the Polynesians, survival was more than skill. It was a sacred relationship with the universe itself, a continuous dialogue between humans and nature that shaped every moment of existence. Their culture, their art, and their spirituality formed a single unbroken thread stretching from the ancient past into the endless future, carried across generations by memory, devotion, and the quiet, steady heartbeat of the Pacific Ocean. In the heart of the Pacific, where the horizon curves endlessly and the sky forms a shimmering dome over waves that breathe like a living creature, the art of navigation rose not merely as a skill, but as a sacred science, one woven with spirituality, memory, discipline, and intimate understanding of the universe. To the ancient Polynesian navigator, the night sky was not an empty darkness, but a vast celestial library, where each star had a purpose, each constellation carried a lesson, and every movement of light across the heavens revealed a direction written long before human history began. They memorized not 10, not 20, but hundreds of stars, knowing exactly where each one would rise, where it would travel, and where it would sink beneath the edge of the world. Stars were grouped into families, pathways called star houses, arranged around the horizon like spokes on a cosmic wheel. A navigator did not simply glance upward. He internalized the entire sky, creating a star compass within his mind, one so detailed that he could guide a canoe across thousands of miles even if clouds swallowed the heavens for days. Beneath the stars, the ocean offered its own teachings, long swells rolling from distant storms, cross currents hinting at islands far beyond sight, gentle ripples betraying underwater seamounts. Even on moonless nights, a navigator felt the rhythm of the sea through the hull of the canoe, sensing subtle shifts in temperature, vibration, and direction, information so delicate that only years of training could interpret it. The world around them became a constant conversation of clues. The scent of vegetation carried by wind, the path of seabirds returning to land at dusk, the reflection of starlight on calm water near reefs. With each detail absorbed, each pattern memorized, and each whisper of nature understood, navigation transcended technique and transformed into a profound harmony between human awareness, ancestral wisdom, and the living universe. To understand the mind of a Polynesian navigator is to step into a realm where memory becomes geography, intuition becomes mathematics, and the ocean itself becomes an unfolding map etched into the navigator's consciousness. Unlike modern sailors who rely on charts, compasses, and instruments, these master navigators carried no tools except their senses, yet their accuracy rivaled, and often surpassed, that of modern technology. Their map was alive. It shifted with seasons, with wind patterns, with migratory birds, with the swell of the deep ocean. The navigator learned to read the world with a type of heightened awareness that seems almost supernatural to the modern mind. He could sit in the center of the canoe, close his eyes, and feel the long wave coming from the northeast, the shorter chop from the south, the distant pulse of a storm-born swell originating more than 1,000 miles away. Through these layers of movement, he triangulated location, direction, and distance. The navigator memorized the rising and setting points of every guiding star for each island in the Pacific, creating unique paths based on angles of ascent and descent. When the sky clouded over, he turned to the ocean's texture. When the ocean became unpredictable, he watched the birds, terns, frigates, nadas, each species with its own range from land. When birds were scarce, he looked to the clouds, knowing that the shape and color of cloud bottoms revealed whether they hovered over deep water, reef, lagoon, or mountain. Every detail mattered: temperature of the wind, haze on the horizon, drifting pieces of land-borne debris, even the smell of the air. All these signs flowed into the navigator's awareness without hesitation, allowing him to guide vessels across distances so immense that most of the world considered them impossible. Yet these voyagers succeeded time and time again, because their knowledge was not fragmented but holistic, not memorized but embodied. Their training began in childhood, often before they could walk, sitting beside elders who recited chants describing star paths, wave patterns, and ancestral routes passed down for centuries. Over years of strict discipline, they learned to maintain calm in storms, clarity in darkness, and presence in silence. By the time a navigator led a voyage, he carried the Pacific within him, every current, every constellation, every ancient path. The canoe moved forward, but the map lived inside the navigator's mind, shifting and breathing like the ocean itself. To voyage across the Pacific was to participate in a sacred dialogue between the physical world and the unseen realm of the ancestors. Navigators believed that they did not sail alone. The spirits of their forebears traveled beside them, guiding their intuition, steadying their judgment, and protecting their canoes as they crossed waters deeper and broader than any continent. Each voyage began with prayer, offerings, and chants that invoked lineage, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, navigators who had once made the same journeys under the same constellations. The ocean, too, was treated with reverence, never as an enemy but as a powerful elder deserving of respect. This spiritual bond allowed voyagers to feel confident in moments where the natural world tested them. When storms raged, they trusted not only their training but the presence of ancestral guidance. When nights stretched long and the sky hid behind clouds, they steadied their minds and listened for the ocean's voice, believing that the ancestors whispered through waves, winds, and instinct. Even success was viewed as collaboration with forces greater than themselves. Landfall, especially after weeks at sea, was experienced as a moment of profound spiritual gratitude, a merging of destiny and tradition. As new islands rose on the horizon, the navigator and crew offered chants of thanks, acknowledging that their safe passage was the result of harmony between humans, nature, and ancestral memory. Over time, this practice connected hundreds of islands across a region larger than Russia, forming a network of cultures united not by borders, but by the shared understanding that the ocean was both a path and a teacher. And in this vast watery world, navigation became more than science or skill. It became a spiritual legacy, a living bridge between past and present, a reminder that human beings are capable of extraordinary connection when they listen deeply, observe patiently, and move through the world with humility. Every voyage was an act of remembrance, every landfall a renewal of heritage, and every returning canoe a testament to the enduring brilliance of Polynesian navigation, a gentle mastery that still echoes across the Pacific, whispering to waves, stars, and future generations who continue to honor the art of finding one's way through the world. Life on the Polynesian islands unfolded in a gentle rhythm shaped by the sun, wind, and tide. Villages rose near quiet shorelines, where the first light of dawn painted the lagoons in silver and gold, and the voices of early morning fishermen echoed softly across the water. Homes were woven from pandanus leaves, their roofs breathing with every breeze, their floors smooth from generations of feet moving across them. As the sun climbed, communities stirred into motion. Farmers walked toward terraces of taro and sweet potato, women prepared coconut fibers for weaving, and children played in the sand under the watchful eyes of elders who whispered stories older than memory. Every person had a role: navigator, canoe builder, gardener, healer, storyteller, and each role wove into the communal fabric like the braided strands of a rope strong enough to hold generations together. Day after day, year after year, the islanders lived with a deep awareness of their environment, the changing color of the horizon, the way birds circled above a certain reef, the scent of rain carried on the wind. Nothing was random, nothing was ignored. Everything in nature spoke a quiet language that the people understood. And in that steady harmony, life moved not with urgency, but with purpose, slow, sacred, and profoundly connected to the land and sea that sustained them. To thrive in the remote islands of the Pacific, Polynesian societies mastered every aspect of their environment with extraordinary skill. Farmers carved irrigated terraces into valleys, guiding fresh water along stone channels to grow taro in lush, green patches. Breadfruit trees rose like guardians over the villages, providing shade, wood, and endless nourishment. On volcanic islands, the soil was rich and generous. On coral atolls, people adapted with ingenuity, growing crops in pits dug to reach fresh water trapped beneath the sand. Fishing was both art and science. Nets woven from hibiscus bark were cast with precision, hooks carved from bone gleamed in the sun, and fishermen could read the reef as though it were an ancient manuscript, knowing where the octopus hid, where the tuna ran, where the tides would shift. Inside each home, the day's harvest was cooked over glowing stones, the scent of roasting breadfruit mingling with the salty breeze. Evenings were woven with song, chants that honored ancestors, stories of creation, genealogies tracing lineage across centuries. Spiritual guides, kahuna, tohunga, and elders, taught respect for every living thing, the ocean as a giver of life, the mountains as guardians, the sky as a canvas of divine patterns. Life on the islands was never merely practical. It was deeply spiritual, guided by rituals, ceremonies, and a worldview in which humans were not separate from nature, but a living part of its breath and motion. In the center of island life stood the strong, unbroken thread of community, ohana, wana, the extended family that reached far beyond blood relations. Decisions were made collectively under the guidance of chiefs, whose authority came not only from lineage, but from wisdom, generosity, and service. Artisans carved canoes from massive tree trunks, their hands moving with knowledge passed down through countless generations. Women wove mats finer than cloth, their patterns telling stories of voyages, ancestors, and islands long settled. Festivals filled the nights with laughter, drums echoing against the cliffs, dancers moving in steps that honored gods, heroes, and the natural forces that shaped their world. And always, beyond the village, beyond the reef, the ocean waited, blue, endless, alive. It was a highway of possibility, a teacher, a test of courage, and a reminder of the vast world the Polynesians had mastered. Children grew up learning its moods, memorizing its swells, understanding that every island, every family, every generation was part of a greater lineage that spanned the entire Pacific. When stars appeared, bright and ancient above the quiet villages, elders would sit with the young and speak of how their ancestors crossed the ocean guided only by the heavens. These stories were not legends. They were maps of memory, promises of identity, and instructions for the next great voyage. Thus, life on the islands was more than survival. It was the creation of a resilient civilization shaped by harmony, ingenuity, and the eternal rhythm of sea and sky. For countless generations, the Polynesian world had existed in a vast oceanic sphere shaped by ancestral knowledge and the rhythms of nature. Then, one day, in the 1700s, islanders gazing across the horizon saw shapes unlike their canoes, tall wooden vessels with billowing sails, moving silently toward their shores. These European ships arrived first as distant curiosities, drifting like ghosts across the blue, their masts towering above the waves. For some Polynesian communities, these ships brought fascination, unfamiliar faces, metal tools that gleamed in the sun, woven fabrics stronger than barkcloth, maps inked with continents the islanders had never heard of. For others, the visitors brought confusion and caution, a sense that the world they knew so intimately was beginning to shift. And yet, in those early moments, there was also wonder, a recognition that new stories were unfolding, that the ocean once again carried messages of change, just as it had carried their ancestors to new lands centuries before. With the arrival of explorers such as James Cook, Bougainville, and later European traders, missionaries, and whalers, the Polynesian world entered a period of intense contact. New technologies arrived rapidly: iron nails that made canoe building easier, knives sharper than stone, cloth that dried quickly after storms, muskets that changed the balance of power between rival chiefs. At first, many islanders embraced these tools, seeing them as helpful additions to their existing knowledge. There were moments of cooperation: Polynesian navigators guiding European ships, chiefs trading food for tools, families observing these strange visitors with curiosity. But behind the exchanges came deeper disruptions. Diseases swept through villages, illnesses the islanders had no immunity to, dimming fires in homes that had burned for centuries. Missionaries encouraged new beliefs, challenging ancient rituals and sacred traditions. The old ways did not disappear at once. They resisted, adapted, reshaped themselves. But the tide of change had begun to wash across the Pacific, subtle at first, then powerful and unstoppable. As the 1800s unfolded, the Polynesian world found itself balancing between preservation and transformation. Some leaders saw the newcomers as threats, tightening their control over land and customs. Others sought alliances, hoping that embracing certain elements of Western technology would strengthen their communities. Kingdoms rose and fell. Families watched their children attend mission schools where foreign languages replaced ancestral chants, and prayers from distant lands blended with the sound of the ocean. And yet, even in this period of upheaval, the heart of Polynesian identity endured. Elders continued to teach genealogy beneath the shade of breadfruit trees. Navigators whispered star paths to the next generation. Women continued weaving mats whose patterns carried stories older than any written alphabet. Canoes were still launched at dawn, gliding across lagoons as they always had. Amid change, loss, and cultural negotiation, the Polynesian spirit refused to fade. Instead, it learned to reshape itself, honoring the past while navigating the uncertain tides of the future. By the early 1900s, many Polynesian societies had undergone profound transformation: new governments, new economies, new borders drawn by distant powers. And yet, the story did not end in silence. It continued in resilience. The people revived ancient dances once banned by missionaries. They restored voyaging traditions, rebuilding double-hulled canoes like the ones their ancestors had sailed thousands of years before. They rediscovered the star compass, the swell patterns, the sacred knowledge that defined their heritage. Cultural festivals emerged, bringing together distant islands of the Polynesian Triangle once again: Hawaii, Aotearoa, Rapa Nui, Samoa, Tonga, Tahiti, reaffirming a shared identity that no colonization could erase. Today, the Polynesian world stands as a living testament to endurance, a legacy shaped by centuries of exploration, challenged by waves of change, yet kept alive through courage, pride, and a deep, unbroken connection to the ocean. For even when the world shifted around them, the Polynesians remembered who they were: children of the sea, guardians of knowledge, and navigators of both water and time. In the late 20th century, a quiet but powerful awakening began across the Polynesian world, a revival of identity, memory, and ancestral pride. After generations of colonial influence, cultural loss, and silence, the islands felt a stirring, like the first wind lifting across a calm lagoon. Elders who had guarded fragments of ancient knowledge began to speak again. Families searched for traditions nearly forgotten. Communities gathered to breathe life back into the practices that once defined them: the chants that carried history, the dances that honored gods and heroes, the stories whispered beneath the ocean winds. This revival was not sudden. It moved slowly, gently, like a tide returning after a long night. But with every passing year, the movement grew stronger. Across Hawaii, Aotearoa, Tahiti, Samoa, Tonga, and dozens of island nations, the people felt a renewing force, an unbroken connection stretching back thousands of years, ready to take its rightful place in the modern world. A defining moment of this cultural rebirth came with the launching of the Klee in 1975, a double-hulled voyaging canoe built using ancient Polynesian design. It symbolized not just a vessel, but a resurrection of knowledge nearly lost to time, the sacred art of wayfinding. Under the guidance of master navigator Lug from Samoa, a man whose memory held the star paths of countless generations, Klee sailed from Hawaii to Tahiti using no compass, no maps, no modern instruments. Only the stars, the swells, the birds, the currents, and the wisdom of ancestors guided the way. When the canoe reached Tahiti in triumph, more than 17,000 people lined the shore to greet her, tears streaming down their faces. It was proof, living, undeniable, that the Polynesians had never been accidental drifters. They were intentional, brilliant navigators. Klee's voyage reignited pride across the entire Pacific, inspiring a new generation to study traditional navigation, rebuild voyaging canoes, and sail routes that had not been crossed in centuries. With the revival of navigation came a broader movement, the restoration of Polynesian language, art, and ceremony. Across the islands, immersion schools emerged where children once again learned to speak Hawaiian, Maori, Tahitian, Samoan, and other ancestral languages from their first day in class. Elders taught chants that encoded genealogies stretching back to the gods. Tattoo artists revived ancient Tata and Moko traditions, restoring the symbols that once mapped identity, rank, and personal history across the body. Dancers performed hula and haka not merely as entertainment, but as acts of remembrance, each gesture preserving stories of creation, migration, and warfare. Carvers shaped paddles and canoes from sacred trees with the same reverence their ancestors used. Weavers crafted fine mats that told entire family histories. In every community, the arts rose like a second heartbeat, reminding the people that culture does not die unless it is forgotten. And now, none of it was forgotten. Children and young adults of today's Polynesia grow up in a world where the old and the new walk side by side. They might study engineering, medicine, or technology by day, then paddle traditional outrigger canoes at sunset. They may dance haka on global stages, representing not only their nations, but their ancestors. They might learn to navigate using satellite maps, yet also know the rising stars of the eastern horizon, the feel of a southern swell at midnight, the way a seabird's path reveals land beyond the horizon. Festivals across the Pacific, Merry Monarch in Hawaii, Te Matatini in Aotearoa, Haiva in Tahiti, and countless others, bring together people from every island nation, celebrating unity in diversity. The young are taught that identity is not a relic, it is a living flame carried through time. They are reminded that their roots stretch deep into the ocean, and that wherever they travel in the world, they carry the strength of their ancestors within them. Today, the Pacific Ocean, once a vast frontier crossed by bold voyagers, has become a symbol of renewal, resilience, and hope. Modern navigators continue sailing traditional canoes like Klee, Hikianalia, Gaulofa, Teorere, and many others, journeying across thousands of miles to spread a message of cultural pride and environmental stewardship. Every voyage reconnects the island nations, reminding them of their shared ancestry and shared responsibility for the ocean that gives them life. The revival is no longer just about remembering the past, it is about shaping the future. Polynesian leaders work to protect sacred lands, restore coral reefs, preserve languages, and teach the old ways to children who watch with bright eyes and eager hearts. And so, the story continues. The ocean that once guided their ancestors now guides new generations, inspiring them to sail forward with courage, wisdom, and an unshakable sense of belonging. The Polynesian revival is not just a chapter in history, It is a living, breathing journey, carried on the wind, written in the waves, and alive in every beating heart of the Pacific. Beneath the quiet glow of the moon, the Pacific stretches outward like a shimmering dream, its surface brushed by silver light, its waves moving with a patience that has outlived empires, storms, and centuries of change. As the night deepens, we return to the memory of those who first sailed this endless blue world, navigators whose courage shaped the map of humanity long before their names were written down. Their spirits move through the gentle rise and fall of the tides, whispering through palm leaves, echoing in distant surf, guiding us back to a time when the stars were more than points of light. They were companions, teachers, and pathways across a universe of water. Tonight, as the ocean breathes in slow, rhythmic pulses, we honor the boldness of the ancestors, the quiet determination with which they carved canoes, the wisdom with which they watched the sky, the strength with which they trusted the horizon even when it offered no promise except possibility. Their legacy flows through every current, every island, every culture shaped by salt, wind, and story. So rest now. Let your mind drift like a canoe on a calm night, carried softly by the same ocean that once carried them. Allow the stars above to guide your thoughts into peace, allow the waves below to cradle your dreams, and let the vast Pacific remind you that journeys never truly end. They echo forward, living on in every tide, every generation, and every quiet ripple that touches the shore. Sleep gently, for the ocean still remembers you, still holds you, and still carries the ancient voyage onward into tomorrow's dawn.